Hey folks, welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. I'm Michael Bryant. This is the afternoon session. Beautiful afternoon here in Manhattan. Hope it is nice where you are. And we're listening to the closing argument by the defense in the case against Jimmy Rodgers. With me in studio, Chad Young. Mr. Attorney, sir, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Michael?
Good. You know, first let me get your thoughts on this style. This is not a guy the jury has seen a lot of. They've seen mostly his co-counsel, the woman at the table there. I think her name is Cynthia Rose? No, it is Kathleen Fitzgeorge. So what do you think about having kind of a new face in front of the jury for this important part of the process?
Well, I think it could give a new perspective. You know, the jury's been hearing from the same attorney over and over and over. Maybe to have just sort of a fresh face, a new perspective on the evidence may be helpful.
Okay, so let me ask you this. And he just started talking about burglary. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to step into the law and crime classroom. Burglary, people think, well, what was ripped off? And I don't remember a lot of evidence about things being ripped off. In fact, attorneys just talking about money being, basically framed on the wall they didn't take. But burglary is not just breaking in to steal money, right?
Right.
So that is the predicate felony for felony murder. What's the deal with burglary?
Yeah, I think where they're getting that in this case is the intent that they believe these two guys had when they originally went into the house. There's been testimony and evidence in this case has come out that their intent was to go in the house and steal stuff and make it look like it had been a ransack. So if you go into the home, break into the home with that intent, that's where you get your burglary.
So even if they really weren't going to steal anything, it's still a burglary. And I remember, everybody remembers from law school, burglary is the, wait, let me figure this out here. Breaking and entering of a dwelling house of another with the intent to commit a felony therein. And that felony can be anything, doesn't have to be stealing. The defense, again, attacking the prosecution's story, they would say, the one that's really been driven most intently by the guy who rolled over on Jimmy Rodgers, the defendant now on trial, and that is, of course, Curtis Wainwright Jr. Chad Young here with me. What do you think about, I get the sense that this attorney is almost chastising the jury. Like, come on, if you believe that story, you're morons, you're idiots. It's almost, unsettling.
I agree, and he's also sort of presenting murder as if, we all know how this goes. We've all done this before, as if like going to get your teeth cleaned at the dentist, right? Every time you kill someone, you do this or you
would never do this, or this. That story's ridiculous.
Well, I'm sorry, the jury has not killed people, and hopefully, and they don't know what the normal person does when they're in the middle of killing someone. So I question it.
So let me hit you with a couple of specific points he made. You tell me what you think about his argument. He says, come on, there would have been a scream. This woman, Teresa Sievers, she was fighting for her life. You think she's going to do nothing more than just say, why? Which is kind of a chilling moment if it did, carry out that way. So what about that first point? She would have screamed, right?
Another example of when he's saying what we all would do in these types of situations, whether we're being killed or trying to kill someone. I mean, no one knows what's going through someone's mind at the moment that they're being murdered.
So one other thing he mentioned was the passionate nature of the killing. If you believe, Curtis Wainwright Jr., that when Ms. Sievers surprised them, that they just kind of went into a frenzy. They each had their, respective hammers, and, they were just going at her, boom, boom, boom. But why would Jimmy Rodgers, who didn't even know her, be so passionate about killing this woman? What's your answer to that?
Well, that was something that would have to have come out through the evidence, right? I mean, I don't know exactly where the hammers came from, but I think initially they went in to try to strangle her.
I think Jimmy was in for killing her.
And when they startled her, maybe they picked up the hammer, and then it turned into a rage.
They were definitely weapons of convenience and opportunity, but it just seems the defense is trying to say he wouldn't have been passionate. No matter what the weapon was, he would not have been passionate about using it because he didn't know the person, as opposed to, of course, Mr. Wainwright, who was friends with her. That's why she would say to him, why? That's the prosecution's argument. The defense closing here clearly pointing to Mr. Curtis Wainwright Jr., saying the guy's just a liar, period. And that's really the crux of the case. Chad Young here with me in the studio. Really, it comes down to if the jury believes this guy, the guy who's rolled over to get his 25 years, not sentenced yet, by the way, and won't be till December 2nd. Hopefully, I'm assuming that's dependent on the outcome here, somewhat resolution-based sentencing, but he's been promised 25. So, isn't that what this boils down to? The jury either believes Wainwright Jr. or they don't.
Well, that and the cell phone evidence. There's got to be some way that Jimmy Ray Rodgers' attorneys can explain that cell phone evidence.
Okay, so let's go with the defense argument here. Jimmy just popped in the car to ride with his buddy, Curtis Wainwright Jr., down to Florida. Of course he had his phone. Of course he was along the route that he was expected to be. but there was never any discussion about how they were going to kill somebody, what the big master plan was. Jimmy was just along for the ride.
Well, then why was he texting with the burner phone? Why was there the code language? Why were they pinging at the same time, at the same place near the murder scene? I mean, there's a lot of other evidence that needs to be explained by Mr. Rodgers if you're going to be calling Mr. Wright a liar.
Obviously, very circumstantial stuff, which we know can be plenty, but is it enough? Just those connections in and of themselves without the testimony of Curtis Wainwright?
Well, it would be a very circumstantial case. You know, it's when you line everything up, which I think was something that the prosecutor in her closing argument in this case did very well. You know, she was very methodical. She was meticulous. She may not have had a lot of passion in her closing, but she connected those dots in a way that made a very strong circumstantial
And I would
case.
agree. A lot of those things you've talked about are corroborative, but I still think without old Curtis, if you don't believe that guy, Jimmy Rodgers is off the hook. So that's what it's going to come down to, in my humble opinion. Okay, let's take a quick break. We're coming back. This is the Law and Crime Network. Stay with us.